Welcome back to Three Takes on AI. Today is our third podcast focused on ROI from AI. Campbell hosts the call and helps keep Mike and I focused on how organizations gain value from their AI strategies. Listen, take notes, and there's a special offer at the end of the podcast.
Hey, well, it's a great day in December, and this is podcast number three, and I have the honor of being able to kick this one off. And today's topic is really focusing on, the whole aspect of, investing in AI versus just the ROI that you can potentially get back from the ROI. And if it actually is a great lead in from the other two podcasts that we've done so far, in that, one was focusing on some of the myths around failure rates and capabilities, including, the aspect of shadow AI impacting, the utilization of AI, the perception of AI. So there's, that factor, and then obviously the AI bubble. I think we all had a bit of a, slight disagreement on, are we in a bubble? Are we not in a bubble? What should we be looking for? So I think this is another great lead in, because this is really tied into those other two subjects to a certain degree. And, to set the context from an investment point of view, and typically when I look at it, my take on it is more focused on the fundamentals of an organization getting the benefit. There was Arvind Krishna from IBM actually this week was just quoted as raising questions around the costing for what he's terming the AGI race, the artificial general intelligence race, which I think is part of the hype, the FOMO, and that is where I think the concern lies, specifically around AI bubbles and things like that. But hit the number that he threw out there, is, well, his feeling was AGI is almost like a pipe dream, but there's still trillions of dollars in productivity gains that organizations are going to gain, and investors are going to gain back from the investments that they make in AI. I think the number that he put out there was 800 billion in just profits to be able to cover the capital expenditure costs and interest alone, just on what's been invested so far. A couple of other things, and then I'm gonna, hand it off to Brian. But it's just some numbers out here, because the way I always look at it is risk adjust, because of just obviously consulting SMB companies primarily, and other organizations of that size. They're concerned. There's a lot of concern around just the risk associated with it. But if we look at certain values and metrics, ROI. The headlines out there are saying 370% ROI with AI projects. The reality really seems to be sitting at around 11 to 16%, because the data shows that 42% of the projects are scrapped or there's no ROI. Success rate, we keep hearing 75% success rate. But really, it's more around 20%, because that is dealing with survival rates of projects. So for all of the projects that people are investing in or trying to implement, there's a high degree of failure rate of the projects, which then skews the number again. Productivity gains, again, we're hearing high numbers, 40, 50%. But it's really around 5%, because they're defining task-based productivity versus role-based productivity. So there's a lot of the specifics that we need to get into here in regards to, looking at the true reality of what it means to invest in AI, as well as, the ROI that we potentially are going to get back from it. So, Brian, what are your thoughts in this space?
Well, you and I talked about key performance indicators and how do organizations actually measure what they're doing. And really, I started earlier in the year developing what I call the business of AI roadmap. And the real answer to this technology will be the same as it has been for the past. And that is, organizations need to understand three key things before they decide on a solution or a path. Number one is the organization culturally skilled, technically, and the culture of the organization ready for an AI solution? And how do you close those gaps? And then the second thing that I think is the most important key performance indicator is the business metrics. That's not a technology one at all. So an organization needs to say they have a list of a number of business priorities. Maybe it's stated in an earnings report, maybe it's a presentation or something that they can measure a metric against and measure how AI can influence or achieve that goal and objective. That really is the right KPI. That means the organization will pick they'll prioritize the right use case. They'll make sure that AI can address that metric in the time frame that the organization is either internally or publicly committed to achieve it. And then that will stay the course. So as they go through a project, whether they're developing a solution, buying one, or leveraging tools that are already in market, they'll measure against those metrics. And I think that's where the key to me is because, yesterday the hype was maybe the OpenAI is falling behind Google or not. But if you stay the focus on your business and your metrics and what AI can achieve, the hype or the news of the day won't distract you from potential success.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, and Mike, just if we look at, we hear things, like a leader saying, AI is going to fix our pipeline quality, et cetera. How do you tend to look at that, and how do you sort of break it apart from, trying to get to the reality of that?
Yeah, and I'm kind of following what Brian just had to say. That at the end of the day, this is always, and it follows what I said, about the bubble. It's always about money, and I think people forget that. They get caught up in the glitz and the glamour, and the money is going to start to show up in a negative way with things like we've invested in these AI tools to help us with our sales, but we're not seeing improved close rates. We're not seeing improvement in pipeline activity. We're not seeing improvement in forecast accuracy. And so, when I get involved with a client and we go to pipeline, the first thing that I do is and I think we've talked about this on other podcasts. The first thing I do is I look at the aging of the deals, which you can absolutely do with AI, and you should. So if you tell me that your average sales cycle length is 60 days, then you immediately would go to pipeline and look at anything that's 3x. So anything 180 days or older, that's immediately suspect. And what I've found in my clients is we've had cases where we've had 70%, 90% of the pipeline that we've had to pull down because it's not qualified. So how will it fix pipeline quality? Well, the diagnostic is still on, is the deal qualified? And AI in and of itself doesn't tell you that. That's still the human and the human involvement. Now, if you're truly recording all your calls, then yes, you can train Gong or Chorus or what have you to look at the qualification criteria that you're laying out for your sales team. But again, we're going to go back to the humans. You need everybody following the same criteria, the same question logic on deal qualification. And that doesn't happen very often. And I'll say this last part and then I'll pause. We still have companies using BANT to qualify an opportunity. And BANT is 70 years old and it doesn't work. Maybe in a transactional, less complex or not very complex deal. But when you start getting into the types of deals that we're talking about, budget authority need timing? Nope. I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm happy to debate anybody on this. That's not going to tell you if you have a qualified opportunity. It's not going to tell you that your pipeline is healthy, and AI isn't going to fix that.
And I think, Mike, that's the important point. A lot of times we choose a technology before we really assess the problem. And if the problem really is a human issue, it's you and I have talked about this a lot, where their skill in the field isn't right. There's nothing you can do with AI to fix a human issue our process. And more importantly, especially from an ROI perspective, it may be investing in AI is going to lengthen the time to get to the value or the improvement that you need. So if you do the right assessment up front and the right prioritization, the odds are you're going to be more successful because you might discover A, it is a human issue. B, there may be a simple application upgrade or something that will deliver that value that you need, and it'll close the time to get to the right business objective. We typically, especially in the IT industry, whether we're in sales or consulting, we want to lean on the latest technology. But right now, I think a lot of the challenges are where I think, Mike, you said it, I think in an article or two, we're trying to automate a process that's already broken. And so if you don't fix the core process, what's the point of applying new technology to it?
Yeah, you're right, Brian. And what happens is you get worse. Instead of getting worse faster with AI, you get worse at hyperspeed. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, everybody who knows me knows I'm a car guy. If I had time and money, or time and space, I should say, I'd have 100 cars and trucks. But I don't. But one of the reasons why the 1960s, 70s muscle cars are so valuable is that the really high end ones like the Buick GS 455 and the Mustang GT 500 is because they got wrecked, because you put all this horsepower into a vehicle that wasn't really designed for it and then didn't teach people how to drive it. And what do? They wrapped them around trees and telephone poles. So yeah, this is no different. We're taking sales folks, and we're picking on sales folks in particular, putting them in the driver's seat with AI. We're not teaching them how to use it. We're not fixing the underlying issues and underlying problems, and then saying, okay, now go close more deals. And then we're surprised. Like, they're not closing more deals. Right. And they're not going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm picking up here is a couple of things. Brian, you had sort of touched on KPIs. Mike, you had alluded to, again, clear definition of the issue, the underlying processes, the training, what I would say is change management to a certain degree, because to your point, if they're using outdated sales methodologies with the fastest, most powerful engine, they're still going to crash. So I think that when I focus on validating these decisions that these customers that I'm dealing with around AI, I leverage the three key pillars of my method, right? And that is like people, process, and the policy. And if the process is broken, nothing's going to be able to be fixed. If you don't have clarity around policy about, what are the rules of engagement? How am I actually going to be able to do this as an organization that line up to my KPIs, my strategic intent as an organization, then it's all going to fall by the wayside. And through the ROI analysis, I guess another question I've got for both of you is AI ROI different in how we measure it versus traditional ways and means of doing it? I mean, what I'm seeing is obviously you've got the fundamental financials, the numbers, the hard math around, what you're trying to do over a 3-year window, 5-year window, whatever it may be. But you've got all the intangibles too, right? Business benefit, business risk, technical benefit, technical risk. So I'm curious to see what your perspective is on, is it the same on how we potentially go forward and measure and prove the validity of AI in systems?
I think it depends on the perspective of the organization. If you're one, I think it was one of the CIOs at Chase said that all their failures in AI were building skills to the future and was improving what they would do. And they saw that as a good, strong choice to do. And I think if the organization isn't, if you look at the long horizon and they see AI as a key, it's something that they need to take on either from a business point of view, a competitive point of view, and they're going to invest in the long run. You might look at ROI a little differently. But if you're really looking at it from a core point of the business, the ROI should be very similar. Maybe you decide on a different horizon for the ROI itself, but it goes back to where I started on this call. You have to measure against what your business is. And most organizations are not technology first. They are selling cars, to Mike's point. They're baking cookies, they're doing things. And how does it impact that? And I think you have to use a common ROI model to compare your investment in AI to, do you buy a new truck, or do the other things that you could invest in that you might perceive to improve your business. So I think it should be something, again, going back to the beginning, if they are going to invest in the long run and they're just putting money into the skill base, that's one thing. But if it's a project by project, it should be measured and compared against other things that aren't AI.
Okay.
I agree. I think, yeah, that it is fair to measure it that way. I also, if I think back to, just all my years of selling and the very basic fundamental of the ROI model, which is, if I'm buying a solution in order to improve my close rates, and what does that mean in terms of revenue, then I need to be very diligent about measuring that constantly to see if, in fact, I'm getting a measurable positive result. And it, I think people tend to add and put a lot of other data into the model to make the data tell the story that they want to tell.
Mm.
Right? So similarly, if I'm buying or implementing AI because I need to reduce customer churn, then my ROI model has to be very focused and dedicated to churn. Now, I would submit to you that there are other upstream activities that have to be implemented, changed, process improvement in order to impact your churn. But again, when you talk about ROI, you're either going to be, you either have to be very specific to the project or very broad and for the business itself. And yeah, this goes to something Brian's been, talking about, and I am 100% aligned, which is the language around AI. And I would even say on the macro, the language and the terms we use about the economy in 2026, call it, and going forward, have to change. We live in a different time, and therefore the measures have to change as well.
Right.
Yeah, one last comment. And Campbell, you've written a lot about governance and data quality and those kind of things. And I think the challenge on ROI for AI is all the things that you have to do before AI can be valuable, right? You have to have good data quality. You have to think about structured and unstructured data that is going to be required. You have to choose how you're going to, what models you're going to buy. Do you have the infrastructure? Have you improved your cybersecurity capabilities? So there's a lot of costs that are may not look at the initial implementation, but they need to be considered. And I think that's makes it a little more challenging as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's yeah, I actually had coffee this week with a good point of contact I have. The comment was, and this actually probably came from somebody else. He was not taking credit for it, but basically he said, and if you reflect back to when you were younger, you're sitting at the dining room table when your parents are overseeing what you're eating. The view is, well, before you can get your AI dessert, you've got to eat your data veggies. And the fundamentals are all there, and it's all basic. But I think the key takeaway here, is a clear business problem or statement for anybody wanting to, implement and invest and get, value back. You have to have a clear problem, and then you obviously align to your business strategy, your outcomes, your KPIs, and then you map the technology into it. I think from a from people that are looking to invest into AI. Again, look at the risk-adjusted factors because, again, I come back to Arvind's comment because it really is, it did hit a bit of a reality check. People don't necessarily think, okay, well, I'm going to invest in this company that's doing great AI, but all the fundamentals, the veggies sitting at the bottom of the plate around data foundations, data management. Where's the data coming from? How do I vet? How do I evaluate? What happens if a model gets switched in, switched out, if it goes from Google to OpenAI? But also, just the key factor about how to drive that. I mean, so my view is, always take a risk adjusted view of whether you're going to be investing in AI or implementing AI and hoping and expecting to get ROI back on it. And so, if we look at it, I guess the bottom line would be if you're going to invest or launch 5 pilots, whether it's in the sales front office environment, whether it's in the back office environment, or whatever journey you're going to take, 3 are fundamentally going to fail. One will not break even. So therefore, that one project has to have clear problem statement definition, key metrics to therefore have that one project cover the cost of the other 4. So it's a matter of putting in realistic targets and a blended portfolio of it. I think that's the takeaway here. But I think we're all 3 of us have got different points of view and perspectives on this. It's critical, but again, the fundamentals don't go away. Focus on some of the basics.
And we're right at 20 minutes, but I just want to make an offer, and that is I have a class on the business of AI roadmap on Udemy, and anyone who subscribes to our podcast, I'll send you a 50% off coupon. So we'll get you started in your journey. And I thank you all, both of you gentlemen, and we look forward to the next one. I think we're going to do a year-end wrap-up, and we'll look forward to everyone hearing what we have to say as we look forward to the new year.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.